How did you, I mean, I don't understand how someone, maybe, were movies just in your DNA that you could go and create what was really, at a time when people were breaking all the rules and making very sort of slapdash in good and bad ways motion pictures, to make something with that kind of classical beauty and something that was at once, you know, mythic and at the same time very intimate.
Well, thank you. I don't know. I just made it the way I thought it ought to be. My mother was a big lover of Mozart, and which meant that she liked things that were light, heavy but light, and that inspired me. You know, heavy but light, heavy undertone but lightly done. There's a lot of comedy in the picture. And my father was a great painter, so I grew up from the moment I was born practically with composition, because he painted in the house. And so composition was something that I was constantly aware of. And I was taken to see silent movies when I was very young. At the Museum of Modern Art, because my father was a good deal older than my mother, so he had grown up with silent movies, so he took me to see them. And, well, silent movies are the foundation of the medium. I mean, some of the best moments in this picture are silent. Looks between people, and I think that comes from my inculcation, or whatever the hell the word is, with silent films. But, you know, people said to me, you're a guy from Manhattan, you grew up in Manhattan, how did you know how to make Texas? Well, I think the fact that I was from Manhattan actually was a plus, because Texas became like a foreign country to me. You know, who knew about peanut patties or pralines, I became very fond of peanut patties and pralines. I ate them like crazy, but I didn't know anything I didn't know about Hank Williams or country music. I thought Cold, Cold Heart was a Tony Bennett hit. I didn't know Hank Williams had the hit first, till I started working on this picture.
I love how, I mean, I love music in movies, but I love the silences in this movie, and I love the fact that you only use found music, right?
Source music.
Source music, sorry.
Yeah, source music. The only time you hear any music is when somebody's playing it on the radio or it's on TV or something like that. I had decided not to have a score. In fact, I never had a score in a picture except when the picture didn't work. Or parts of it didn't work. I would throw some music in because that's what most people do. You'll see most films are wall-to-wall music. I never liked that. I thought that and believe me, there's many films that I love that have great scores, but I always felt somehow that I'd be cheating if I had a score. That having an underscoring that would help the scene means that the scene wasn't good enough by itself. Also, I like the idea of a counterpoint where the scene may be sad and the music like in the last scene is sort of comic music, or the scene is comic and the song is sad or slow. The counterpoint, it gives the feeling that there's another world going on outside the world of the scene. And I like that feeling. I learned that on Targets. My first film, we didn't have any money, so we just got, somebody gave me 5 records and said, you use what you want, and we used it as sound effects, really. Hitchcock did it very well in Rear Window, where he barely had a score. It gives this sort of verisimilitude, I think, more realistic.
It also hints, I think, when you bring in popular culture, it also connects with the character's dreams in a way that then you don't have to spell out in dialogue.
Yeah, and the other thing was Larry's book is written a sort of generic 50s. And he doesn't specify what year it is. So I was extremely sort of Germanic almost in terms of determining when we start the picture and when it ends. So it begins in October or early November of 1951 and ends around the same time in 52. So the songs that we played were very much music that would be played at that time or slightly earlier, because they usually had, songs stick around for a few years. And the movies that were playing at the theater were movies that would have been playing at that, 16th run movie theater. And they would bring back a picture like Red River, since it was only 48, this is about 3 or 4 years old. So I was very precise about that, and it helped me, because you limited it to a certain period,
You mentioned Red River. I know you had your differences, to say the least, with Pauline Kael, but she wrote a very positive, and I think respectfully ungrudging rave review of this movie. You said it was grudging somewhere, but her one comment that I really wanted to ask you about, that was a reservation that I don't necessarily agree with, was that she pointed out in the book McMurtry uses really kind of lousy B pictures to put in the cinema. And the last one is an Audie Murphy movie called The Kid from Texas that's so bad that
The Abilene Kid.
What, sorry?
It's The Abilene Kid.
The Abilene Kid, they walk out of it before it ends. But you chose to use Red River, to kind of make a statement about, I don't know, something about the American male, I guess. That
No, it was, I'll tell you what it was. Larry has in common, he's a kind of a Victorian sensibility. He wishes that he was born in the 19th century, because then he could write books like the Brothers Karamazov, and War and Peace. The great era of the novel was the 19th century. So he doesn't like movies. I mean, the kind of movies he watches are bad movies, so he can laugh at them. he doesn't like movies, really. And I do. I think he resents movies as having taken the place of a novel. So, I mean, we never discussed it, but that's the way I feel about it. So I felt that at the end of the movie theater, when the last performance, it should be some really good movie. But more important, it should be some movie that had some connection to them. And showing the Red River, because it's about a cattle drive from Texas up north to Missouri. I thought it captured a moment in time when adventure and excitement, and there was excitement and new frontiers. Let's take them to Missouri, man. And here are these kids sitting in this broken down town, and where's the magic? Where's the adventure for them? And so that was the counterpoint.
Counterpoint, right. That makes a lot of sense.
I had no other choice except Wagon Master, which is about a trek of the Mormons to Utah. John Ford also has some great sequences, but I thought somehow John Wayne saying, "Take him to Missouri, man," and Monty Clift rubbing his nose. I mean, it's just, you had me. Of course, Red River was my favorite movie when I was 10. Still one of my favorites.
I think you can see that in your reverence for Hawks and in your use of actors. Not only that,
there's a funny story about Red River, because most people think that John Ford directed it because it had John Wayne in it, and Ford was famous for directing westerns with John Wayne. So now Howard Hawks, who directed Red River, told me the story. Says, people used to come up to Jack Ford and they'd say, "We like Red River," and he'd say, "Thank you very much."
You did a ton of interviews, which are published in this book beforehand. You were really the sort of archetypal movie-obsessed, dazed, hero-worshipping kid who went to all these directors and talked to them about their movies and knew their movies back and forth. And it seemed to me, reading through your work, you must have had about, when you became a director, you must have had like 30 mentors, like the greatest in the history of film.
Yeah, I did pretty well with mentors. I had Ford and Wells and Hitchcock. and the Hawks were right up there, and Sammy Fuller. But you know, the thing is, the difference between myself and most journalists or writers about movies was that before I did one interview, I had already acted in the theater professionally for 4 years and had been involved in about 40 productions in the theater, and I had directed in the theater a number of plays, 3 or 4 plays. So I was an actor-director asking these questions as a way of learning about the craft and at the same time spreading the word about these directors. And so I wasn't asking the questions as a journalist or even as a fan, but rather as a professional trying to store up nuts for the winter, really.